Hello, sisters and brothers. This is another episode of WDRS Talk, the Wolf's Den Radio Show Talk. And this is your host, Wolf Gemora. Thank you very much for joining me for another great episode. And this one is going to be a really good one. And before we go on, I just want to invite you to please subscribe to the channel, WDRS Talk, here on YouTube. And also, you can listen to this on Spotify as well. So please subscribe to the page and turn on your notifications so you can get fresh episodes as they come out of the oven. All right. So this episode's guest is a theater actor, originally a theater actor. I consider him to be the king of Philippine theater, though I do not want to bestow that on him because there are others of his era that were just as good as him. But he, for me, is one of the top theater people in the Philippines ever. And he also happens to be my uncle and my dad's younger brother. And it was a very good episode, and this is the most that I have actually talked to my uncle, and I look up to him in that sense of performance and artistry, and he's good at what he does, and he is a classic. So please welcome to the podcast, and this is going to be a really good conversation between myself and my uncle, the Philippines' best theater personality for me, Audie Gemora. I hope you enjoyed this one. All right, thank you very much for joining me on another episode of WDRS Talk, the Wolf's Den Radio Show Talk. And with me today on this episode is a very respected gentleman in his world of theater, Philippine theater. And he also happens to be my uncle, my father's younger brother. So here is Mr. Audie Gemora. Tito Audie, thank you very much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Not many people know that at home we call you Leslie. And hindi pa rin ako sanay calling you Wolf. I mean, that's so foreign to me, although I'm with your music, but you'll always be this kid in my mind. You know how it is when you're growing up, I mean, you get older and then you saw kids, and even if they grow up pala, ganun, when I was younger, people would say, si ganito, ganito. They treat you like kids, and then you're grown up already, but they still look at you like kids. That's happening to me now. So everybody that grew up when I was, of a certain age, and you were all kids, you stayed kids.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I don't mind getting called Leslie by my family because, I understand. I am Leslie to my family.
You're going to have at one point to explain to me how you came up with Wolf at one point.
Oh, yeah. I actually have, see? That's the important thing. I did a podcast with Paco Chaga. He has a podcast, and it's all there. All I have to do is just send you the link, and that whole story is there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's good to reconnect with you. I haven't seen you for some time. I think the last time you were in Manila was about 3 years ago.
The wedding of April.
Right.
Yeah. Was that 2 years already or 3 years?
Three pa nga eh.
Yeah, 3, I think. Yeah, going on 4.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, let's just wait for this whole thing to be over, and then we can all travel again.
Yeah. So how is it there in Manila? What's your daily routine if there is one?
Oh my God! Talk about routine. That is exactly what is driving me crazy. Is the fact that it's parang Groundhog Day every day, paulit-ulit. It's the same thing that you're doing again, and that is driving me crazy. So we the pandemic happened here. We got quarantined around about last week of March, and I was about to open a show called Ramahari of Ryan Cayabyab at the CCP, and
Mhm.
we got canceled. You know, we were one of the shows that got canceled that were about to open.
Wow.
And since that time, since March, wala, absolutely no shows. And for a while, I was advised not to go to work, and then there was one point when they allowed us to go to work, and then when uptick insists, they asked us again to work from home, and that's how it's been since.
Mm.
Um, yeah, we can talk a lot about how artists here are coping with COVID, but
Yeah,
definitely artists were among the first to try to do something about being locked in, because as artists we need to express ourselves.
exactly.
And so, like, very early on in the pandemic, nakikita mo na everybody's on Facebook, you know, either singing or cooking or reading or, you know, doing script readings or, yeah, it's been crazy. I did a, would you believe I did a virtual play? I mean, we were on, it's called the Virgin Lab Fest. I did a play online streaming.
Oh,
It was
wow.
so, it was so odd acting. It's exactly the way we're doing this now. I'm seeing you on screen and I'm acting with you. You're my ka-eksena. But at the same time, technically speaking, I'm just looking into this little dot, you
Oh
know,
my
this
God.
little dot in the computer, and I'm trying to relate to this dot in the computer.
Oh, because
So it's
you have to look at the you have to look
right.
at the camera.
Yeah, because if I look at you, for example, here we are, we're
Yeah.
talking side by side on StreamYard, and if I look at you, my eye level is not correct.
Right.
So kailangan for it to be correct, like I'm talking to you, I have to look into the
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah.
It's so odd acting. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Y-
but you know, there you go. So
So
it's been yeah.
so what was did someone write that just for that?
No. The Virgin Lab Fest is an annual festival. What it is it's a festival of one act untried plays. That's why it's called the Virgin Lab Fest, because it's
Oh.
all virgin material. It's a lab because basically, you know, people are trying out material, and it's a festival because there are about 12 or 15 untried shows that are showcased.
Hmm.
And so over the years, I think it's on their it's 11th or 12th year already. You know, the theater community gathers and does this, and it's the one of the unifying endeavors that theater community undergoes, because regardless of what theater company you belong to, somehow one way or another you're going to get either invited as a director or as an actor, and so it's a great place to meet people you've never worked with.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's largely Tagalog, which challenges me. You know,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that's what we've been doing. And then artists, we had to. There was an effort. I belong to this coalition of theater companies called Phil Stage, and one of the first things we did was to try to raise funds for a lot of our colleagues who got displaced because walang trabaho eh. The
Right.
first that got affected immediately was entertainment, and still is. We're still the last
It's gonna be
sector
yeah, yeah. The
that
last
is
talaga.
last, yeah, because nobody's allowed to be in an enclosed place. So we did fundraisings. You know, we initiated this thing called Open House, where we put together all kinds of programs where people, you know, acted, read scripts, did talks. I did a workshop of musical theater,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we basically were just asking people to donate, and the money that we raised was given to a lot of our colleagues who are out of work.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah, so the
it's
theater
tough.
community was very busy. Sorry,
Yeah.
Les.
No, I mean it's tough really on in the musicians world too, especially musicians because man, some of them, especially the ones that are doing it really for that's their income. You know, they're cover bands and they play in hotels and whatnot, and that's their bread and butter. They don't have day jobs. That's their day job. A
Correct.
professional cover band.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can you imagine? I mean, so if you don't have any other source of income, really, and we raised a lot of money for them, but at the end of the day, they got like what 5,000 pesos each, which is like I can't even
Oh my
hold for
God.
a
Yeah.
month.
That's
So it's like, can you imagine? But what's happening now is a lot of people are now starting to migrate to the digital platform. So every aside from Facebook, which you can now monetize, people were on YouTube. People were starting to do like you podcast then. But here in the Philippines, and
Mhm.
then TikTok, and here in the Philippines, I don't know if you've heard there in the States. There's this thing called Kumu.
Oh yeah,
What
Kumo. Yeah.
have you heard of it?
I oh, no, no, no. I'm thinking of something else. I'm sorry.
Okay,
No, I don't.
somebody came up with an app, right?
Okay.
Where you are able to broadcast, you are able to stream on Kumu. Actually, you should consider it.
Okay.
You're able to broadcast on Kumu. It's like you have a personal site. It's live,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very. I think it came out of Korea, and now it's a Philippine company, but so you come on there and you do anything you want. You can talk, you can perform, you can cook, you can and then people are watching you live, and you are relating to them. And as you relate to them, you are supposed to like encourage them to give you gifts, and gifts convert to money.
Yeah.
So a lot of the theater actors migrated to Kumu. Um,
Oh.
and it's interesting because in Kumu, I mean, a lot of artistas also went into Kumu, but your celebrity can only get you so far if you're an actor, for example, but you don't perform. I mean, what are you going to do there? Magpapakyut ka lang,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, but of course, because of their following, they are also doing well. But what I want to say is that the theater actors who are not as known as like say TV or film actors,
Mm-hmm.
are also able to build a following because of their talent. Because
Right.
there they can really perform. Um, so yeah,
So
everybody
what do
migrated.
they? So what do you mean by perform? What do they do?
Well, for example, I'm. If this is for, can you imagine if I'm right now and I'm on my Kumu broadcast or
Uh huh.
stream, I can now start. But you're always engaging your audience. You always have to talk to them
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't engage them, they normally won't give you points. Um,
Ah, okay.
So, you're constantly barking and telling people, oh, magdagdag naman kayo ng pera dyan, pahingin naman ng gift. It's like you're like a barker, right? And
Oh
then you
wow.
perform. You say, oh, I want to sing this song, and you start performing. And then what everybody's been
Oh
doing is they
okay.
guess each other. So they come up with a show and they guess each other, and it's basically the same theater community going, revolving around each other, and they sing in each other's kumu,
Mm-hmm.
and earn points. And thankfully, they're earning enough to get them by for now because nobody's
Wow.
performing.
Well, well, that's the thing. I mean, there's this quote that I heard on in the documentary is that uh, great art thrives or is born out of chaos. You
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
when it's like it was because that quote was describing like the punk rock movement in New York City in 1977, and New York
Hmm.
City in that year was just it was bankrupt, it was burning, and but then this new form of rock and roll, which is punk rock music, like the Clash, the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, that all came from New York. And so yeah, so it's like during these weird times where we have to stay indoors, the artist will always come up with something,
True that.
always. Yeah.
True.
And
True that.
and the medium now is not the stage, not the physical stage, but the
Virtual
virtual,
digital stage. Yeah.
the digital stage. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think, like you say, it is now evolving so that there's another platform or art form that live performers never considered. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, now, even when the pandemic is over and we all go back to our respective performing places live, I think there's no longer any. I mean, we can no longer remove ourselves from the digital
Yeah.
connection. I think, like we were saying before, I mean, from now on, if we're going to do a show, i-video na. I mean, we never considered that before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now you're going to consider taping it and then figuring out ways that it can be seen by more people because live is limited in space.
Yeah.
But now
Exactly.
you have a live show and then you video it or you stream it or
Stream it.
whatever. Yeah, then you widen your audience and then you preserve your performance.
Yeah. At the same time,
Right.
and
So
yeah, yeah.
so
There's so many people that have learned technology. You know.
you don't say. This
Yeah.
old
It's
man. Yeah, this
yeah,
old man is learning.
and myself included. It's like I learned how to make a live podcast that plays music, and it's like
Yeah.
wow, and all you got to do it's all on YouTube. I just learned everything on YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean I guess that's human beings are like that. You got to adapt or else you'll get left behind. You know.
Yes. Right. So
So go, yeah,
so that's what I've been doing ever since the lockdown.
yeah,
Basically trying to stay creative. I think it's very important for us artists to be creative and to still be creating. I hate the regiment or the routine of every day. Getting up and my routine now is getting up, watching the news.
yeah.
I can't stand politics in the Philippines because there is no politics in the Philippines. It's
It's a
so I
free
don't
for
want.
all.
Yeah, so not even it's a one
Oh, it's
person
a
running.
one. Yeah.
Right. So it's so I don't even I get too jarred when I look at local news. So I
Yeah.
actually am following the American elections and politics. It's very um how would I say?
Compelling.
Yeah, it's
It's Tito. Every time this happens, when it's the presidential election, I unplug, man. I try my best to not
really.
watch anything, not even the highlights, because I
Yeah.
just get I just get pissed off, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I guess when you're too close to home, when it's too close to home, you can't bear. But I guess the distance allows me some
oh yeah, 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 yeah. You have a different perspective. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But the reason why I'm so keen on watching, even before the elections started in the U.S., it was really about the pandemic because you look at the news and finding out what's going on in the rest of the
yeah,
world
yeah.
because
Exactly.
you are relative to that. So I would rather listen to what's from international news, what's really happening, rather than listening to the propaganda
Yeah,
home. So yeah, I watch the news, and then I have some online meetings, and then I'm blessed with a pool, so I'm always
that's
taking my daily dip or taking a walk around the village. There was a period
good.
when we weren't allowed to walk around,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was
Yeah, total
driving.
lockdown. The first like 3 months was just total lockdown. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And then at night, Netflix. you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
So yeah, it drives me up the wall when this routine just goes on and on. I need to break it. I think I'm reaching na nga a point right now when I'm like trying to figure out anong gagawin ko ngayon kasi
Oh my
this
God.
can't
Yeah.
this can't keep going on.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like we're going to be able to come back soon. Um,
Not soon. It doesn't look like. I mean, because like you said, the theaters, the indoor, that's the last thing that they're gonna open because you can't. It makes no sense to have a half theater that's social distance. I mean, you know, just stay home and watch live videos.
Right.
It's like
Right.
all or nothing, in
Yeah.
that kind of setting. And I,
Yeah.
and here in like me, my thing here, my life, my normal life is just I have a day job, and then when summer comes, it's concert season, and it's like at least five big major concerts, and then a couple of smaller ones. I mean, that's my life. I look forward to the summer because not because the
Mhm.
beach, but there are going to be a lot of concerts. And now
Mhm.
there's nothing at all. There's nothing at all. So it's like, oh man, it's
Are
like
they following strict protocols there you're in San Diego, right?
no, Orange County.
Oh, Orange
That's
County. All right.
yeah, that's in between LA and San Diego.
All right. So, are they following strict
Well,
quarantine?
yeah. When you're in an establishment, yes. But when you're outdoors, there's some people that they don't want to wear a mask for. I don't want to get into it, but they
Yeah.
don't. There are people
Let's
that don't
avoid,
that they
let's
don't want
avoid
to do it.
politics here. Yeah, let's avoid politics in
Yeah.
this podcast.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so I included you in this podcast series because um, you are, in my eyes, probably the uh, I wouldn't say the king of Philippine theater. I want to, but I don't. I don't want to put you in that pedestal alone because I'm sure there's so many other people who are involved in that whole big you guys. I call you guys the OGs. You know
What's
the an O an OGs. It's original gangsta. So
wow?
you're the original. You guys are the pioneers of like Philippine theater in my eyes. You got you like the Lochenkos and all of those people.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start off by um, a memory of mine. My first memories of you would be in that house where you are now, the same house. I grew up in that house,
Right.
and you were in the music room, and the sliding doors they have glass, right?
Right.
And I remember peering, even I don't know if I was even tiptoeing, but I would peer, and I remember April was peering also, and we would watch you rehearse
Oh,
and
really?
dance. Yeah, I don't know if
Oh,
you ever noticed us, but
no, maybe
we
not.
yeah, probably yeah. You were looking back at it now. I can still clearly see it in my mind that you were. I can see you. You were throwing kicks up like that, and then what I remember was your feet were so dirty. That's what I remember because you were barefoot.
Yeah.
Because you were barefoot, so every time that you do a kick, I would see the bottom of your feet, and it would be dirty because you're barefoot. That's what I remember.
Oh
So
my.
so so now we're going back. What were you doing? Do you remember that time? What?
How
Gosh,
old were you? Because I'll try to trace it by how old you were.
well,
Were you?
if are those sliding doors still there, the same ones?
They are. As a
So
matter of
I
fact.
so I could see over the glass
Oh, you
without
could see over the
tiptoeing.
glass.
So maybe I was
Okay.
5 or 6. Oh no, because April was there already. Maybe I was 7 or 8.
So that would have been what? 19 what?
77,
Okay. Well, if it's
70,
1970,
76 or 77.
okay, it was 1977.
Oh no, wait. I'm sorry, no. Because April was born in 76. So she was probably 4. Oh no, or maybe that was just me. But I remember, I don't know if she was there. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm really hazy about my sister being there. But I remember seeing all of that.
Hmm.
So probably 76, 77. Yeah.
Right. Well, at that stage, I wasn't even if that at that period I wasn't even professional yet. Maybe that was still just high school.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, because I didn't become
Wow.
professional in 1978. Um, I was still in high school at that time, so it was. I was already starting to do high school musicals, so it
Mm-hmm.
must have been for one of those high school musicals.
Oh wow.
Or I used to be, I used to go to the disco a lot. So maybe just
Oh, you're just dancing, probably.
yeah, it might have
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
probably what it was.
yeah. So I mean, that's what my image of you was. It's like, wow, really physical, because you were kicking up high like this, like an axe
Yeah,
stick or something. And
yeah.
yeah, and then I think you would even you could
Turn.
twirl, you could turn
Yeah,
like
yeah.
more than twice, and it's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's how I used to train myself how to do what they call in the business pirouettes. I would hold
Pirouettes.
on to those very doors in the music room. You're talking about the music room. I would hold those sliding doors in the music room, and I would what they call a spot, where you're focused on the edge of that door, and then I would do a quick turn and turn back to that same spot. That's how you study to be to do these pirouettes.
Oh, okay. So
So
you
yeah,
and
it's very likely that you would have seen me do something there.
wow. Do you remember the music that you would dance to or accompany with?
Well, if in the 70s, ang daming disco music noon. So
Ah, okay. So disco na at that time.
yeah, it was
Ah,
really
okay.
disco. This was, and it was around about 76 or 77. That was even pre Saturday Night Fever, but there was already a lot of disco. I used to go
Yeah.
to this discotheque called Where Else, and every weekend, me and I used to go to a school called the International School. So me and a lot of my schoolmates would meet up in the weekends and do disco. That's how
Mm.
the young people used to entertain themselves. We used
Where
to really dress up and go to discotheques and do
where
routines.
Oh wow. Where else?
Where else is where the Intercon Hotel used to be? I say used to be because they tore it down. They're
I
now
know.
building a new edifice there. But
Wow.
that used to be the disco. Everybody used to go there. And so yeah, we that was probably for one of those weekend disco
Nice. So
parties.
you're oh, and then you had routines. You would like
Yeah,
so
I
what is this? Like dance battles or something?
yeah, kind of like that. Except you did it
Wow.
in pairs
In
because
pairs. Ah,
in
okay.
pairs. Yeah, you did it in pairs. So you would show off. Or kung hindi man dance battles, it's just well, basically you're all on the floor together and you just show your moves. And if you're really really good, I mean, you will catch attention. People will start looking at wow, galing nito or whatever. But
So would circles form or something on the dance floor?
they could. Yeah, they could. They could.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was dancing and social dancing, or at that time was something that people really prepared for. People would really dress up for it.
Mm-hmm.
They would really prepare dance routines. You go out there and in a sense, you're like really performing.
I just remembered, I'm sorry. Like when I was starting to go out in I was high school, it was already the one in San Lorenzo, rumors. Rumors ba yan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
rumors. And then you could get up on the ledge. Oh my
yeah.
god.
Ledge dancing.
Oh, ledge dancing. I did that a couple of times. It was
Ano
fun,
yan,
man.
80s or 90s?
That's late 80s, probably 88, 87, 89 ganun. Yeah, it was fun. So yeah, going back to that. So that's my first memory of you, doing what you do. When what's the genesis of all this? What made you say, okay, I want to be a performer on stage, a theater guy?
Okay. Well, wait a minute. This is a podcast. I know. Are you hearing the cat outside?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's mating season.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay. There you go.
um, no. Well, for those of you who don't know, Leslie and I come from an Ilonggo family. I was born in Iloilo, and I remember Les growing up in Iloilo as a little boy, that there was always music around the house because your grandparents love music. So
Oh, really?
yeah, my dad always had a stereo at that time, and there was always music blaring, and of course your grandmother and your tita Pasit, the sister who came after your dad.
Oh,
They were
that's
both
right. Yeah.
they were both classical pianists, so they were always
Wow.
rehearsing on the piano. I remember there was a baby Steinway in the living room, and so they were always on it. And then as a kid, one of the first
Who's this? Sorry, Tita Pasit and who else?
and your grandmother.
Oh, really? She
Both of
played the
them
piano?
yes, very good classical
My God.
pianists. But but your tita Pasit said, she could have been good enough to really be out there, and she could have done the concert scene. But she told me at one point she never had the guts for it. So I think
Who's this?
your tita Pasit, yeah,
Oh,
your tita
wow.
Pasit, at one point, and I said, you play so well. How come you never went into concert, concertos? And she says, because I never had the guts for it.
Wow.
And what you don't know about your grandmother, who was Emma Lopez Laguda, is that I didn't reach her anymore, but everybody was telling me that in her youth she was a fantastic lyric soprano.
Your mom?
Yes, that she was a lyric soprano, that if she had also really ventured into it seriously, she could have become a real serious classical
Oh my God.
singer, and even possibly have gone to opera if the opportunities were there. But you have to remember, at their time,
Yeah.
in the late 40s into the 50s, there were no opportunities for them. There was no profession to speak of.
Yeah.
And so
Oh my God.
these ladies,
My mind is exploding right now. Oh my God.
oh, I mean, you are where you are, Les, because it's in the blood.
Yeah. Now I get it. Because I'm
Absolutely.
wondering, kasi it's like, okay, so in my mind it's like I always try to figure it out. It's like, okay, there's me, my generation, and then there's Tito Audie, and then who else? It's like for me it stopped with you. Now I know there's like, okay, it's Lola. It's Lola Emma.
Yeah. They could
Yeah.
have done this if the opportunities were there for them. And of course, in those days when you were a woman, they were married off very young. I mean, my mom, I
Yeah.
think, was married when she was in her teens.
Oh, wow.
Walang profession eh. So I mean, there was no career. I mean, women
Right,
were
right.
basically reared so that they could marry and raise a family.
Yeah.
So there was absolutely no opportunities for them to consider any kind of career, let alone pursue an artistic career. There was no
Artistic
such
career,
thing.
yeah. No such
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
no such thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Going back to just growing up in that milieu, I was always surrounded by music, and I remember my mom giving me and my younger brother Nonel a long playing album of nursery rhymes, and that was the first time I really got exposed to music. Learning those nursery rhymes, recorded nursery rhymes, and then later on when we grew up,
Was this was it on vinyl or a tape? Cassette?
Vinyl.
Oh, on vinyl.
Well,
Okay.
cassette one. This was
Yeah.
I'm talking about like super early 60s, maybe
Yeah.
61,
Right.
62, right? And then later on we moved to Manila. I moved to Manila when I was 6 years old. We got moved and we lived in Bel Air, because your Tita Pasit had studied Spanish in Spain and came back, and now she was a Spanish teacher at the American school. And so my mom said, look, I'm going to bring you to Manila, make sure you have better education there, and I'll put you in American school because your sister's there so she can watch over you. So that's how I ended up in Manila and in American school, which eventually became the international school. But when we moved to Manila, same thing, in the house in Bel Air, there was always music. And I do remember my mom giving us an album with classical composers. I remember this one album that featured Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, and Haydn. So it was their music, and it was my first exposure to classical music as a little boy. And then your dad, I remember growing up in Bel Air, because your dad was a young bachelor at that time, had a lot of music too, you know. So that's when I got my exposure to all the recordings of the great stars of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Listening to your dad's and my sister's albums. Then when I grew up, I also came to like a group called the Monkees, and then other forms of music. And my mom brought me a small phonograph. For those who don't know what a phonograph is, it's this thing where you put a vinyl and you play. You know.
Yeah. Was that the portable one?
It was a portable one. And you know what I used to do, Les? I would lie down on the sofa. And the portable one, kasi you can detach the top of this phonograph, and that was the speaker.
Yeah.
Wala pang what do you call that? Wala pang Walkman at that time. There were no cassettes either. So you know what I do? So I play the long playing album or vinyl on the player, on the turntable, and then I would take the speaker that was usually the top of this contraption, then I would put it on my ear.
On your ear.
Right down there. That was our Walkman at that time.
Wow. So you could really feel the music, you know.
Feel the music and get lost in it, you know.
Yeah. So it was just one ear.
It was just one ear.
You had to put it to the other ear para hindi mabingin isa.
Yeah. It was a big speaker pa, so that, you know.
Yeah.
But all I wanted to say is that I grew up as a boy surrounded by music, and also a lot of my cousins were into movies and stuff like that. So we were constantly being exposed to that. But it wasn't until high school, really, at the international school, when I discovered that I could perform. Up until that time, I was kind of like the class artist, because from your grandfather's side naman, the Gemora side naman, your grandfather was very gifted drawing. And so I also inherited.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was a very good visual artist. And your other tita, Shari, was also very visual. And so is your uncle Nonel, who's younger than me. We all draw very well, and that comes from the Gemora.
You have paintings in when I was growing up. You have paintings there in the second floor, right? Yeah.
Correct, because I was painting all the time. So I was the class artist at IS growing up. But, you know, visual arts is a very lonely art form, because you're pretty much on your own painting. Yeah. And I was very, my social skills were very bad, because your grandparents, I'm a menopause baby, which means I was like a second edition, you know. First it was your dad and the two sisters.
Right.
Then it took 16 years before my parents came up with the second set, which was me and my brother. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
The gap between your dad and mine, your dad rather, and me, is 21 years.
Really? 21
so he's
years?
Old enough to be my dad.
Oh my gosh.
So I was a menopause baby.
Okay.
And so because my parents were really like grandparents, they were really not very active in terms of, you know, rearing us. They just provided, and you were, you know, pretty much left on your own with help.
Okay. Yeah.
And so because of that, you know, my dad never went to school or anything. I was not, I wasn't very good at socializing. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't a very smart academic kid. So I never really quite belonged. So most of the time I was just in the art room, drawing or painting or creating sculpture, and very lonely, didn't have very many friends. And then when I reached my junior year at IS, I just decided, enough of this. I wanted to get out of my shell. And so I started to like join after school activities. Anything I could get into, I joined. It was a conscientious effort to say, enough. of being a lone wolf, so
Right.
to speak, and to start socializing. So I joined many clubs. I joined the choir and all of that, and people found out I could sing. And so one day, this American, my U.S. History teacher, this American lady named Ruth Butler, found out that I could sing. So she approached me at the hallways and said, "Would you like to do be part of my musical?" Because she was directing the high school musicals, and I was in a sense like recruited.
What
Um,
what age is this?
I must have been 15.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and so I joined, and I did this musical called Oklahoma by Rodgers and Hammerstein, and I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea. We just went through the motion of rehearsals, but I do remember that when we finally performed at the Morocco Theater, and that was my first um, salang at the Morocco Theater, which would become like my home for many, many decades.
Oh my God.
First salang at Morocco Theater doing Oklahoma as a contrabida. My role there was Judd Fry. I had
Okay.
one solo. And it just less, I don't know, it just felt like fish in water. After not really fitting in all of my elementary and most of my high school years, all of a sudden it felt like this was easy to do and this is fun to do, and the outcome of that was instantaneous. So the to hear the applause right after performance, and then the next day I remember going to my homeroom, and everybody in my class who never gave me any attention, they all like
Yeah.
gathered at the table, and all of a sudden I was like an instant celebrity.
Instant, man. Instant star.
Instant.
Yeah.
Yeah, overnight.
Yeah.
It's like everybody now wanted to be my friend, so it's like,
Yeah.
what happened here?
Yeah. So
And
wait,
so
the audience was the parents of or
not
what?
only parents, but all my classmates, all the
Oh,
teachers,
okay.
so
Everybody in school. Yeah.
everybody in school. So the next day, first class, everybody gathered around saying, "My God, you're so good!"
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to be my friend, and that really changed. That changed me internally because it gave me such a boost of
Mm.
confidence
Yes.
that, like I mentioned before, I was never into sports, but that gave me confidence now. So I started to sign up for sports, and I started to do that. And I even remember my PE teacher saying, "Hey, Mora, what happened to you? Look at guys, look at Hemora. He never used to participate. Now he's like everywhere. Look at him. He's like,
Wow. You
getting
really
my
you
grades all shot up. I used to be a C average student,
Mhm.
but because of that acceptance and affirmation and the confidence that it gave me, even my grades shot up. So it was just an overall great boost. And I stumbled into something. I discovered what I could do, but I did not understand the full implication of that yet, that I would become an artist. But that's how it began, Les. It started in high school.
Mm. Did you man, I mean I can relate. Yeah. Especially when you hear that cheering crowd.
Yeah.
For the first time you're like, is that for me? Is that really for me? And then yeah, so did you do anything after Oklahoma in high school?
Yeah. Then I joined a singing group called the Octet, and then we got very popular in school, and that exposed me to pop music. And then I remember there was one guy, Nonon Pedero, who was a very well known composer at that time, coming to school, and I remember him going into our choir room, and he was recruiting guys who could sing for an ad. And it was for this cigarette brand. I won't mention anymore.
Okay.
But so yeah, my music teacher picked about three of us, and that was my first experience doing a radio jingle.
Oh
A
yeah,
jingle.
yeah, yeah. So a recording session.
Yes, a recording session, and it was fascinating. And I loved the idea of going into the studio, and that exposed me as well. And then eventually, I became the drama club president, and everybody was saying how good I was, and I did a lot more musicals. And then everybody was saying how good I was. And when I graduated out of high school, I just wanted to test my mettle. One of my teachers from school was directing at this American theater community called Manila Theater Guild out at Army Navy Club in the Rojas Boulevard area. And they were producing this musical called Grease.
Mm.
And so she says, Audie, I think you'd be great as Danny Zuko, the lead role. So I went out and auditioned and I got it. And so that was my first foray out of high school into theater outside. It wasn't pro because they didn't pay us. It was community theater, but it was, again, it was like a step from high school. Now you're in a bigger, community. This time it's the Phil-Am community. And I did really, really well. This is even before John Travolta did the movie.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
He came out with the movie maybe 2 years after.
So wait. That in mind, what you did and what they did in the film, was it the same or was it different? They have their own routine and you had your own thing? Or is there
the movie was born out of the musical. It was really a musical first. It was a very popular musical in the 70s, and then eventually they adapted it for John Travolta.
Okay.
It became so popular with Saturday Night Fever. But yeah, that was my first venture out of high school, the comforts and safety of high school where, of course, students and parents and teachers would be very affirming. But this one, to now know, and then everybody was saying, wow, you're really, really good. And eventually there was this other schoolmate from IS, Noelle Reyes, and I'll always credit her for this, who then told me, you know what? Why don't you audition for Repertory Philippines, which was the only professional theater company at that time. And it was English speaking based. And she says, they're doing a musical called The Chorus Line. Why don't you come out and audition for it? And I went again, just to see how, if I was good enough, and I remember walking into that auditions. There were so many people. I've never been to an audition.
Excuse me. Yeah. I mean, the audition itself looks like the audition in the play itself, right? Because it's all about auditions in the play. So, I just wanted to say before you continue, grabe yung play na yan. That's all I can say. About A Chorus Line. It's like I saw it in the movie, and then in the movie alone, I was like, oh my God, this play is just off the hook. It's like, it's what theater is,
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Michael Bennett. That was the musical in the 70s, and Repertory produced it. I walked into auditions, and it was long in the day, and the head of Repertory Philippines, Zenaida Amador, and her partners, Baby Barredo, and some other stalwarts there were.
These names are legends. Even I know that.
Zenaida Amador was this pillar.
Wow.
And she was notorious for her temper, and it was very intimidating to walk into that room and she's there. So there were so many people. It was the first audition that experience I ever had, and for those who don't know, Chorus Line is a dance musical, so there was a lot of dancing involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why they opened auditions, because Repertory at that time were basically just it was a small band of actors, but this musical required younger people.
Yeah.
With dancing. So that's why they opened the audition. So I walk in there, and it was long in the day, and Bebot, that's how she's called, was no longer even looking. She was
Oh my God.
I walk into the middle of this dance hall and I sang, and she looked up.
What did you sing? Do you remember what you sang?
I don't even remember what I sang, but maybe I sang Corner of the Sky from the musical Pippin.
Uh-huh.
But I remember she looked up and she interrupted me before I could even finish the song. And she says, "Are you passionate about the theater?" And I'm like, huh? Are you passionate about the theater? And like, yeah, I didn't know what to say. Yeah, and to make a long story short, I made it, and that was my entry into Repertory Philippines. And
Did you get it right there, or did you have to wait until they decided?
I don't even remember, but I do remember getting into the cast. And it wasn't even a very big role they gave me. I was really just part of the chorus with some speaking lines.
Okay.
I was the guy who has this hard on, the character that has this hard on. So this whole bit was around this hard on until this very day. There's one gentleman who had seen it, and he always jabs me. He's already so old.
Oh, but every time he actually saw it.
He saw it. So that's his association to me. He's really known. He's a known writer here. Hilarion Henares, and every time he would see me, he'd say, "Hey, Mr. Hardon." So that I can never shake that. I can never live that down. Every time he sees me, it's an old man now. Hey, Mr. Hardon. It was the first role I ever did.
Oh my gosh. And that was already, of course, Meralco Theater, the home of Repertory, right?
No, it was in this theater called Phil Am Life Auditorium down at UN Avenue, which it's still there, but it's no longer open. But it had the best acoustics out of any theater here. You didn't even have to wear microphones because you could be heard in the audience. God. Yeah, ang ganda-ganda ng acoustic ng theater na yun, ng auditorium yan. But we performed it there. It was a medium-sized auditorium that probably sat about 700 people. So it was perfect for a musical like that. It was rather, intimate because it's about chorus people telling, their life stories. Right. So, and it was there, blessed that I discovered that to become a musical theater actor, you had to get into 3 disciplines, basically acting, singing, and dancing.
Right.
So I got very heavy into dancing. I started to take dance classes, and take ballet and jazz and tap. And that was, the time that you saw me doing those kicks in the music room was earlier, right. But I was already limber enough, and I had done track and field in high school. So by the time we were doing chorus line and we were taught to do what they call grand jetés, which are these are giant leaps up into the air where you're like in a split.
Flexible ka na. Yeah.
Easily. And then when we were told to do pirouettes, I could do 3 or 4 easily. And
like, oh man,
where did you come from and why?
Yeah.
And that's why my rise and plus the fact that I had grown up in an American school, I had the accent, and in Repertory they just did mostly American and British plays, so I could do the accent, and so I very quickly from chorus boy I started landing lead roles, and in like a matter of 5 years I was the golden boy of Repertory Philippines.
Wow.
I was the favored one, getting most of the roles, most of the best roles there were. And at age 23 at Repertory, I was already given a directorial job and choreography assignment.
Wow.
At a very young age.
Gosh.
Yeah, so that's how I started in the theater.
Wow. And it seems that it was effortless, it was, I wouldn't say effortless. Of course, you put effort, you had to audition and all of that. But like you said, it was a plan and you just had to execute the plan, but it was already laid out for you. It's like there's the chance, you take the chance or you don't, but you always took the chance. You always say, I'll go for it. Yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah.
But here's something interesting that we could talk about as how it is to be an artist. Lalo na if you're an artist in the Philippines, where I have to say right now, as advanced as theater is already in the Philippines, you still cannot make a decent living out of being a theater actor here.
Okay, that's a good point to remind people.
Right. Yeah. So let's go back to our family background. Leslie and I come from a family of sugar planters. Mm-hmm. That reality was always hounding me as I discovered my artistry. That reality always hounded me because my father, your lolo, would always remind me, "Oh, you're good, but that's a hobby, huh?"
Oh, okay,
after school, you need to you need to go to college. You have to have a degree, and that was constantly being badgered into me. So I right after high school, as I discovered theater in Manila Theater Guild and ultimately in Repertory Philippines and rose there. In contrast to that, because of this upbringing that you needed to do something legit. After high school, I enrolled at the UST, University of Santo Tomas, which was known for their architecture course because I thought that being a visual artist, it would be easy for me to go into architecture. But I had a culture shock. I was always a very how would I say privileged.
Yeah, and you're a free form guy. Architecture is straight lines.
Yeah, yeah. But I had such a culture shock because I was saying I grew up in a very privileged background. I was always chauffeur driven, and the distance between Dasmariñas village where we lived and ISM was short. And I was always chauffeur driven and all of that. And I was raised like an American kid. And all of a sudden I had to take the bus to go to España, to go to UST, España.
Yeah,
and I had to take the bus. And at that time, the buses weren't even aircon. So, I was exposed to the fumes all the time. And
the real world.
The real world, yeah. My parents wanted to now expose me to the real world. So I took the bus. And then I had a culture shock because everybody in UST was Tagalog speaking. And I was so out of place there. And then the worst part of it all, I could have lived with all of that. But the fact that architecture is a very math based career pala. Everything is calculation.
Calculated.
Yeah. It's geometry and trigonometry and statistics. It's crazy. And I was so bad at math that I was miserable. I was miserable after only one semester. I remember sitting here in this house in my bedroom upstairs. So depressed. And I remember my mom coming in and she says, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Ma, I'm not happy at UST. I'm not happy with architecture." And she was so comforting. And she was saying, "You know what? If you're not happy, move. The only thing we want you to do is get a degree because, if you don't have a college education, you can never get a good job. So just make sure that you pack it in. I don't care what course that is, but just have a course, just be able to pack it in." So I moved to De La Salle University, where your Tito Nonel enrolled after he graduated from IS. And I went into business. I tried to take business. And again, after one semester, I flunked accounting.
Same here. Same. Management, business management. Oh my God.
Why is math hounding me,
Yeah. Tito, I had to take algebra 3 times until this miracle worker of a teacher explained it like he was he translated algebra into English for me. If it weren't for that person, I would not know. I mean, of course, the basics, yes, but once it gets to formulas, you're like, okay, I don't care anymore. So yeah, it's the same. It's the same.
I swear to you. I mean, our brain is wired different, and nobody explained that to us in those days, right?
Yeah.
So the only reason why so eventually, make a long story short, I again moved from business. I finally settled with communication arts, which was a new course at La Salle at that time in the early 80s. Communication is like mass comm.
Right.
You learn how to do broadcasting, radio, television, print media, photography.
Yeah.
So I went into that, and it was still a challenge because having to go to school every day, and then go to rehearsals that would last till the wee hours of the morning.
And
then
where are rehearsals?
Yeah, I mean the rehearsals would take
where?
Where? I think Repertory had a rehearsal hall out at Buendia called it was at Land Bank, I think, or we were a Land Bank building, but we were rehearsing there for a period. Yeah, and then when I was doing Chorus Line, it was a dance art studio, which is like the very well-known dance studio. So we were, yeah. So it was just such a sharp contrast, Les. The two worlds that were clashing. Here I was in school trying to, you know, do what any good kid should do to please his parents, which is finish a college education. And then here I am flying in theater, a place which was so affirming and of what I and made me know how special I was.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast, a school that kept reminding me how I was so inept in another area.
Yeah.
Such a contrast. So saan ka, right? Where will you place yourself? Um, but I persevered. I was able to finish college and but it was a struggle. It was a struggle, and I have a story later on to link up to all of this about how it is to follow your design, but at the same time be responsible enough to make sure that you can practice your craft and not have to leave it. So I'm not dissing your grandparents. How would I say, request?
Yeah.
Because it worked out for me in the end to make sure that I had a college education.
No, yeah. It's of course understandable, but of course, our the way our brain is wired is that we don't get that because we know I guess it's already innate in our mind or in our soul is that okay, already have the vision in my mind. I can see myself doing this.
Yeah.
So I can't understand whatever you want me to be a banker. I can't. I can't do that. I do. I hate math. So no. It's like.
Right.
I mean, I understand that what you're saying in that sense because I was the same way. My God.
Yeah. Right.
And then after, and it was I got pissed at because I went to Saint Benildeman, and it's when I left college ready to just pursue Wolfgang. That's when they started putting up these like recording courses, studio recordings, what was it, set design, all these courses that I would have liked. But of course, it was too late. I was out already. I was like, oh man, if those courses were there while I was there, I would have, enjoyed that.
Yeah. Hold on. Is the cat bothering you? I mean, it's like
no, I can hardly hear it.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah. We're good. So during that time in repertory, okay, I'm gonna. I remember two things distinctly. One play that you kissed on stage. I remember that because I was so embarrassed, man. I was because I'm at this time I'm probably like 10, 11. 10, 11 years old. So, I'm seeing someone I know kissing a woman on the stage in front of everyone else. I'm like, what's happening? So I forget what play it was, though I remember the scene. And then the other one was when you did West Side Story in Meralco.
Yeah.
And you played Riff, right? Yeah, you played Riff.
Yeah.
And still one of my favorite, I mean, not one of my favorite play pa rin, West Side Story.
Mine too.
Yeah. And the choreography there is just oh my god talaga. It was here on Netflix for a while. I would rewind that first dance routine. It's just the Sharks and the Jets doing their own thing.
Yeah.
I would rewind it and rewind it and rewind it. I'm like, oh my god, this guy. And it was one guy, right? That one choreographer guy who did all of that.
Jerome Robbins, yes.
So
and
anyway,
that is still an iconic dance, and to this day, every time it gets revived, it's still the Jerome Robbins, and over time it has not aged. It is still
not aged. Yeah,
amazing, totally amazing choreography.
Amazing talaga. It transcends time until forever niyan. They'll be like, okay, that's how they danced during that time, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then so anyway, my memory of that was, and I remember April being there already. So I was probably like 10 or 11, and we were watching you, and then you did a cartwheel on stage. Talagang tumbling. And then me and April were like, wow! We were just like, oh my God. because we know you as Tito Audie. You're just our Tito, And so seeing you being the superstar on stage, we were blown away as kids. We were like, oh my God. Wow. We didn't say, oh my God, but we were screaming when you did that. And so during those times, what would your highlights be in your career in rep?
Well, I did a lot of musicals, sunod-sunod yun eh, and a lot of straight plays also. Some of my better known works were yun nga, West Side Story, South Pacific. I did Amadeus, which was a straight play.
Yeah.
Live about Mozart. We did Pippin. Pippin was such a fantastic musical.
Oh my God! How did you
iconic
how did you
also.
pull that off? Was there, because that was a circus, right?
At that time, it wasn't a circus yet. The restaging said it in a circus, but at that time it wasn't. It was about a band of traveling performers, but it was a heavy. The role that I played, the lead player, I didn't play Pippin. That was played by Kokoy Laurel, who was at that time a matinee idol. No, I played a very demanding role called the lead player, which was a dance role. It was originated by this fantastic performer Ben Vereen.
Yeah, Ben Vereen. The Ben Vereen role. That's your role. I think was I old enough to see that? Because I think I saw that too.
You probably were able to.
Yeah. Because I remember there was one scene that was really scary in the forest.
Oh, okay.
For me as a kid, Yeah, so you were the Ben Vereen character. Yeah.
So yeah, and then basta marami, so many musicals and straight plays. It was great. And then I was doing all of this for 5 years till around when I graduated out of college, out of com. Your grandfather said, okay, but that time your grandmother had passed. And so my dad said that, okay, because your grandmother died, I mean, your mom died, rather, we're going to have to part ways now. So nagkanya-kanya na, your dad separated also, had their own thing. My two sisters had their own thing. And then me and my younger brother inherited this house in Dasma. Yeah. And I was what, maybe 19 or no, at that time, siguro mga 20 na ako, 21. And I was about, when I graduated college, mga 22, 23. And then my dad says, look, we're going to have to go on our separate ways already. You boys are old enough. I'm going to give you my last, investment in you. Go study abroad. And yeah. So my younger brother and I went to the States to study. And I asked Zenaida Amador, my mentor, I said, Bibot, so should I take theater? And she was so mayabang. She says, anything you have to learn about theater, you've already learned from me. She said. So she said, take up filmmaking, because when you come back, I'm going to go into film. I'm going to go into film. So I just followed her advice and applied at the New York University Film School.
Wow.
Tisch.
What year is this?
84, 1984. Mm-hmm. So I went to school in New York, and I studied film for a year, but here was the big culture shock that happened. I was such a big fish in such a small pond called the Philippines or Manila.
Oh yeah, for sure.
New York.
Yeah.
New York, where everybody's there, and I wasn't even a small fry.
It doesn't get more real than New York.
No. And this was pre-Miss Saigon days, where there were no real roles for Asians. The only show that was available for Asians were two. Either you did King and I or Flower Drum Song. And I was there. I think I made a mistake by going to film school. I should have gone to theater instead. Maybe I could have gone into Juilliard or something like that. It would have been more purposeful for me. But I followed Bibot's, direction, and so I went into film school, and I found out very, very the hard way that I wasn't a filmmaker. Right. The art form of film, the film medium is the director's medium. the theater is the performer's medium or the actor's medium, and I think I was really I'm a performer. I am an actor. So I tried to do as best as I could in film, but figuring it was art, you'd think I'd fit in, but no, I didn't. I had a hard time. The movies or filmmaking is a storytelling medium that uses visuals to tell a story.
Right.
And I think to be a good director, you have to be a visual storyteller.
Yeah.
And again, it was very technical because we needed to shoot our own film. We needed to be the cinematographer of our own film. So there was a lot of measuring also. Wow. It's not as simple as putting a camera now. Now your camera, everything now is so easy to, but in those days where we were using 16 millimeter film, you had to measure everything, and light everything, which is just so technical for me. And
wow.
And so again, after about a year in film school, I quit. Mm-hmm. I wasn't happy, and I decided to just stay in the States, and I worked there for a long period, just doing odd jobs. I worked in a casino at one point,
Oh my gosh!
In Reno, Nevada, working as a
Oh wow! You reached Reno?
Yeah, I reached Reno. I lived in Reno for like 2 years. I was working in the casino. And then the revolution happened. And when the revolution in the Philippines happened, I came back here.
Okay.
And everything was so hopeful. And by the time I came back, a lot of my theater colleagues had gone into the mainstream. Raymond Lauchenko was now a very popular matinee idol. He was just a chorus boy when we were in Repertory Philippines before I left the U.S. for the U.S. When I came back, big star na siya. And was already doing pop singing. And then my good friend Freddy Santos had become the #1 concert director in the circuit. And this was a time, Les, I don't know if you remember, I'm talking about like late 80s. So we're talking about 86, 87, 88. These were like golden years of Filipino music. It was called, that's where OPM rose. The term OPM rose, original Filipino music, where the Filipino recording artist or concert artist was coming to his own. Prior to that, it was a lot of foreign albums and foreign artists that were being celebrated. And
I know that. I remember that because I was a teenager when that was happening. So it was like, people were like, "Oh, do you? I got the new Regine Velasquez album." It's like, what? I mean, you think about that now. It's like, what? You know, but back then, people were proud. I mean, this girl can sing, man. And then so
the evolution of music already happened as early as the 70s. As you know, you are a rocker, and all the great music at that time were coming from rock bands. So. Mm-hmm. So, and then of course in the 70s in the late 70s first it started with the rock bands.
Yeah.
And then it evolved into Manila Sound. So that was the late 70s and got into disco and all of that, the BSTs and the hot dogs and all that. But in the 80s, it shifted to soloists. So by the time it came back in the mid to late 80s, you already had, like you mentioned, Regine, Martin, Gary, Shasha, Cool, Haji Alejandro and Basil Valdez, and Basil, Celeste, all those people were earlier there in the 70s.
Earlier,
Lea Navarro, but by the 80s, ang dami ng singers.
Yeah. It was actually a thing to watch Gary Valenciano in concert.
It was.
And I remember because we watched him in Rizal Theater, the original one, the first. I mean, there's only one, Rizal Theater, and Gary V. And then it would be a thing. Yeah, I mean, people were proud to watch local performers. Because at the same time they did deliver. They delivered. That's why people are like, "Oh my God, these guys are amazing!" So I'll pay the ticket to watch Gary V. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was kind of like there was like a resurgence of Philippine music, and not only in the concert scene, but there was a lot of recordings, and there were a lot of recording companies popping up, and so I got in Git, Les. I got in Git.
Okay.
I felt like I had conquered the theater before, and coming back, ganun na naman. So I wasn't really interested in doing theater anymore. So I started to entertain the idea of maybe going into mainstream. I didn't know in what form. But to make a long story short, I found my way to, speaking of Gary V, I approached his wife, Angeli Valenciano, who at that time was already managing Gary, and they had a company called Genesis. And Genesis was like managing artists. And so
their office is in or Wilson.
Yes, around that area, the Ortigas area.
Ortigas and Wilson, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so I approached Angeli and I said, "Hi, I'm Audie," and she says, "Oh, I'm a big fan of yours. I used to watch you in the theater." "Oh, great." I said, "Yeah, I'm such a big fan of yours." She was saying, "Yeah, oh, great. Sabi ko, would I'm looking for a manager. Would you be interested in taking me in as an artist?" And she says, "Oh my God, Audie, I would love to manage your theater career."
Oh, okay.
And I said, I don't. I'm my theater is okay. I don't need help there. What I really want to do is, can you help me become a recording artist? And she was like, "What?"
Oh my God.
I said, "Yeah, I want to do pop. I want to do recording." And she says like, "Okay," But she gave me an assessment, and she says, "Unang-una, Audie, you are from the theater. Your singing style is very huge, and you need to learn how to sing pop." Because Les, my voice was very booming, and musical theater, I started in musical theater. There were no body mics,
right?
No mics.
Yeah,
so we were taught to project in a 2,000 seater hall,
Roman style.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, I'm coming into pop music, wanting to come into pop music, and I'm singing that when she says it's never gonna work. Your voice is too big. You need to learn how to tone it down, to be more airy. And so she got me a vocal coach. And then number 2, she says, "You're Inglesero, and when you go to pop, you need to reach out to the masses, and the masses are largely Tagalog speakers."
Yeah.
And the most disconcerting thing, Les, is that all my life at that point, I had always hidden behind a character. And all of a sudden, I was going to go out there as Audie Gemora and sell myself.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And it's either people like you or they don't like you. And it's a frightening thing.
It is, yeah. Well, I don't know, because I always was in a band. So Wolf Gemora as the thing alone, as in the album cover, no, never. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a lot. That is a lot. That is a lot to put your name in the album cover,
Yeah. And then what she did was she put me, saying, "Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start booking you in these little places where you're going to be forced to speak to people in Filipino and to treat, all kinds of audiences, hindi lang yung mga, the AB crowd." So,
right.
She put me like in like glorified beer gardens. I remember performing in SM North EDSA. There was a place called Circus. I don't know if you remember that place.
Yeah, Circus. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a glorified beer garden, with people drinking and watching, and they can, shout at you while you're performing. And
I played those same places, Tito. I know what you're talking about. Oh my God.
Yeah. Woo. So yeah, I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to do mall shows where you talk to people and make kawaii and and pretend you're a matinee idol and go down there and boo them and they're kilig and you kiss them, and I had to do all that crap, man, to be able to fit in.
Oh my gosh.
But
it's
eventually,
like bordering on politician style already.
It was. It is, because you're selling a product. You're selling yourself.
You're selling yourself, so you got to be there.
Yeah. In fact, in the Philippines, sad to say, and until now, it is largely you're largely selling personalities. The masses are really just interested in a personality rather than the art.
Right.
And so that was how I learned this market, how to cater to this particular market, and it would come back useful later on. But at that time, as a young man in my late 20s, going into my 30s, all I wanted was to be able to explore, and get popular. And so I did that whole thing. I landed a recording contract with Universal Records, and I cut my first album in 1994.
Yeah.
And in 1995, it won an Awit Award for best performance by a new male recording artist. So yeah, it exposed me to television. And that's when I started to go out on TV, guesting in ASAP and all of that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It wasn't even ASAP. It was called Sa Linggo na po sila, I think.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I remember Lunch Date in GMA. I was a regular in all of those shows. Or Germs,
GMA Super Show.
Super Show, right? I was like a fixture there. So promoting my album and all of that. And then I experienced what it was like to go around the country, going to different radios and doing a radio tour.
Yeah.
Into that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the thing. I mean, it's what you have to do anyway. I mean, that's the life. If there are people out there wondering, it's like, what do you do when you tour? That.
Yeah.
The performance is the last thing. It's actually not the last thing, because after the performance, you got to get driven back to the hotel. And the next day, you got to get on a plane. And the day, oh my gosh. The performance is just one off.
Yes.
So many things.
Yes. So I did it. I did that, and then eventually I started acting on television. My Tagalog got better. I really I was struggling so much with my Tagalog. And
how did you learn? How did you teach yourself?
I just had to go in there and do it. I remember in the late 80s, I think I did this show called Hora Encantada, and I was cast opposite Janice de Belen.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like my first Tagalog TV show.
Right, yeah. I know that show. Hora Encantada.
I went in there and she was like looking at me strange, because it was like she was probably thinking, what language are you speaking? Because I don't know, it was like American Ilonggo accent. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
It was like a foreign language to me, Les. I mean, we grew up, Ilonggo is our first language. And then when I went to IS, it was English.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's Tagalog, and it's a complete foreign language to me.
Yeah.
But and the tongue it doesn't follow. You know it in your head, but your tongue doesn't follow. I needed to retrain my tongue, and I don't. Until this very day, I think in English.
Yeah.
And so I'm always constantly translating when I speak Tagalog. But my Tagalog is improved largely. But yeah, that was one of the biggest struggles getting into mainstream. And I dare say, siguro if I were more conversant and more how would I say, if I could really speak it, I would have had a bigger career. It's just that was a limitation.
Yeah.
Because that limited me in my acting. When at that age, I could have done more roles if I was really good at Tagalog, but I wasn't.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. So when I know that part of your career already. I because I've seen it. My dad has the album. You're in a suit, right? That's the album, right?
No, this particular. No. This I was in a black turtleneck with long hair.
How many albums do you have? How many albums?
I have the second album I did. The one with the suit is a Broadway album. It's like I got that much later.
Oh, okay.
But my first album was a pop album, and and that was the style at that time. Was you were wearing everything. Everybody's wearing long hair, black, and wearing all these silver studs and all of that, and it was funny.
The 80s.
Late 80s, going into the 90s.
Going into the 90s. Yeah, that was that was a weird. Yeah, the fashion at that time.
I came into pop music very late. And
Yeah.
I had a hard time. Angeli had a hard time selling me to record albums because by the time she was peddling me into on the labels at the labels rather, I was already in my 30s, and everybody was saying you're too old. You're too old. And
Right.
finally, Universal Records signed me, and yeah, but okay. So I mean, but it opened a lot for me. I got into TV. I started to do hosting jobs. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up now, Les, is that many years later, my connections with mainstream opened doors for me to be able to do uh, original Filipino music. I mean, eventually, I met a lot of artists like Gary, for example, and then in the late '80s, me and my bunch of theater friends had a spiritual renewal of sorts. We became born again Christians in around about 1988.
Yeah.
And of course, as an artist, the first thing you do when something profound or life changing happens to you is that you express it in your art form. And so, Freddy Santos, one of my colleagues, wrote up a musical called First Name, and he asked Gary Valenciano and Ray Anfuentes and Augie Alcacid to write music for it.
I know this. Yeah.
And this is the musical First Name. And the reason why I bring this up is because it ties up to the rest of my life and where my life is right now. My connection with mainstream and theater merged when I did this musical First Name. And the year after that, Freddie came up with another musical called Joseph the Dreamer, and I was cast in that role. It wasn't originally me. It was supposed to be this other singer, Louis Heredia. But Louis got cold feet all of a sudden because he was a pop singer.
Yeah.
And this demanded some kind of acting. So Freddie gave me the role instead, and that was life-changing. That changed the course of my life.
That was your comeback. That was your comeback.
Yes, that was my comeback. Right.
Yeah.
I no longer wanted.
And it also felt like a comeback. I mean, me. It's like, Audie's back. Oh my God. and then, they were promoting a lot these, during that time, I remember theater was so big in Manila, because I knew people who would buy like blocks of seats and be selling theater tickets. I'm like, whoa, all right, here we go.
Right. And I think it was the marriage now about how in the olden days, so the way theater was promoted before was just like you do press releases in the diarios and the broadsheets.
Yeah.
But because of our exposure into mainstream entertainment, our group eventually after the success of Joseph the Dreamer, and that ran for about 10 years, we put up this group called Trumpets.
Yeah.
Trumpets is now it was the country's first professional Christian theater company. But we were, because of our backgrounds, melding, concert and theater, we were able to create a new way of promoting theater, which was more mainstream. So we were, we were on TV, we were doing radio tours, we were, all the stuff that I learned as a mainstream artist, we applied in theater.
Yes.
And using popular artists like Gary V as the writers and all of that, and Mon Faustino as the musical director. And then using the choreographers, for example, of Gary, the maneuvers, choreography. So it made it very mainstream.
Yeah, I saw Joseph, but it was Gary V. That's the one I saw.
Yes, that was 10 years after Joseph the Dreamer in 1989, and I hung up the robes, so to speak, the Joseph the Dreamer robes in 1999.
Wow. How long was your run?
I played for 10 years. 10 years.
God.
Yeah.
And how long is a season?
Oh, but it wasn't even a season because that show just kept running. So every year it would return. It started out in Cebu in this really small theater called St. Teresa's. And then it moved to Manila. We played Morocco, and then it was still so popular. We had so many reruns, and then eventually it started playing coliseums. It played the Cebu Coliseum. It played Ultra. It played Cuneta
Yes,
Astrodome.
yes.
Huge venues.
Huge. It was huge. It my God, yeah. Now that I'm remembering those times, like, yeah, it was huge. Theater was so huge. I mean, it was so
Yeah.
huge that we got involved. I did Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean,
See?
that's how popular, the reach of theater was. It's like, oh, let's do a thing with that rock band over there, even though
Yeah.
heavy metal and theater are just poles apart. But if you have the right music, which is Jesus Christ Superstar, it'll work.
Boy,
And
mental note before we forget, because I might forget.
okay,
I mean, yes, we have never collaborated. I would love to collaborate with you at one point.
yeah, di ba Tito Jamie and I, we sent you a thing.
Yeah,
Do you remember that? Yeah, you're gonna be part
yeah.
of that. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay, we got to
yeah,
do a
for
call.
sure. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure, for sure.
with
Yeah,
Pinoy
that's.
rock music. We got to do something with Pinoy rock music and do it in a theatrical way.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you still have that email, but if you do, just reread it again. That's the gist of it is pretty. It's pretty cool.
So
So
yeah,
anyway,
I would.
so yeah, that's why I can understand a lot of what you're talking about in the theater world is because I was there for, gosh, how long was our thing? We had like 2 months rehearsal and then 2 months of of the run, I think.
Hmm.
So that's four
Which
months.
production was this? Was this the Atlantis production?
Atlantis, yeah. It was
Okay.
Bobby. It was Bobby who
Right,
directed it.
right. I saw that. I saw
Yeah,
that
yeah.
at the GSIS theater.
GSIS, yeah. Yeah, that was promoted really heavily too because it's Wolfgang. Of course, our fans came to see that, and of course the rock crowd, they all know Jesus Christ Superstar. So like, oh, we're definitely watching that play, you know. And yeah, it was like, yeah, it the same thing. It's like a whole new world to me. It's like, okay, rehearsal. It's like, but the lucky thing there is Wolfgang. We were sticklers for rehearsal. We like to rehearse, or even if we didn't like to rehearse, we always pushed ourselves to rehearse. So when we started doing the JC thing, the rehearsal, we were used to it and we liked it. We actually liked, and I got so much better at the drums because we were playing every day, especially when the run started. It would be like, I guess what, for like 4 days a week,
Yeah.
from Thursday to Sunday or Friday. Yeah, Thursday to Sunday. I'd be playing for 2 hours for 4 days. I was like at the end of the run. I was like, I was so good already. But yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
That is so
That
awesome.
yeah,
So awesome.
and it's
Yeah.
great because of it's like it's on the fly. I mean, it's not on the fly, but it's like everything is moving. Like when I saw Phantom of the Opera in New York, I was like, "This is amazing." The set was just moving around, and then before you know it, there's a big chandelier in the stage. And like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
So that's the thing I like about theater. It's like live visual. You know, it's amazing. Yeah, and then of course my cousin, your nephew Mio, is like the best
Oh
set
yeah.
designer I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, he is. He is amazing.
That's
We
another
have a lot
talent.
of artists in our family. Mio is one of the top. What he calls a scenographer. He doesn't want to be called a set
Ah,
designer. Scenographer. He also does costumes, by the way. So he does
okay.
production design. And then your other cousin, see Josh,
Oh,
Josh
Josh, yeah.
Howard,
Oh, yeah.
also have a pretty long career at Repertory Philippines.
Yeah.
Long after I left, when I was doing the pop music circuit, he was the leading man in rep.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and yun. I mean, yeah, we have quite a few family members who got involved in theater.
Okay. So, since we're talking about family members, let's talk a little bit about Don Ledesma, who is
Oh, wow.
your first cousin,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
And my uncle. I call him Tito Dondi. And for me, I would say the best bass player that ever was in the Philippines, and would be one of the best bass players in the world ever. And to musicians out there, I'm going on the record saying that Don D. Ledesma could go toe to toe with Jaco Pastorius. So everyone who knows Jaco, you know what I mean. So what's your experience with Tito Dondi?
Dondi and I were best friends growing up in Iloilo. When we were kids, we were playmates, and he would always be at my house and vice versa. And then when we moved to Manila, my mom would always take us back to Iloilo every summer. And every time I'd go home to summer, Dondi was there. This he was a very hyper, energetic, funny kid who also was an amazing visual artist. He could draw like nobody's better than me. He was really amazing.
Wow.
But that's how I remember him, to be this very funny kalog guy. And so we would go back in summers, during summers, every so often when we were still growing up. But when we became teenagers, and I guess I got heavy into my theater already, I lost touch with him.
Right. Yeah.
All I knew, however, all of a sudden was that all of a sudden he was into rock music. And every time I would see him, he would have this long hair. And then,
what age is this? Are you when you're still in your teens or already in the 20s?
Yeah, teens getting into our early adulthood. I think I would be saying about late 70s. I would, when I saw him, he was already a rocker, and I would listen to some rock stations, and he was already touted around as a major icon.
Wow.
At that time. And then when I would speak to him, he was a complete personality change. He was so quiet and super quiet na siya. I mean, he would hardly speak, and when he would speak, it would be in very low tones, so you could hardly hear.
Yeah.
And he would just giggle. He'd say something. The humor was still there. He'd say something and he'd giggle quietly.
Right, yeah.
Wala na yung what we call in Ilonggo, haras. He was like he used to be like a kiti-kiti, but not anymore. He was just
Not
like
anymore.
really, yeah, he was really cool. And but yeah, and then I remember, Les, he gave me in a cassette a recording of him just playing with the bass guitar, and it was the most amazing thing. And I don't know if I still have it somewhere in Iloilo, and I know what form it would be in, but
oh my God,
it was just him playing the bass guitar in the most unimaginable way. It wasn't even in context to music. It was just I just remember it was making sounds and what he could do with the bass guitar. At one point, it sounded like a combat, because it was like, it sounded like guns. It sounded like a lot of firing of ammunition. I mean, that kind
wow,
of.
Yeah, I get it. No, I understand what you're saying.
It was just amazing finger play, and then all this screeching and all of that, and it was just amazing work.
Oh my God.
But because he was so reticent and hardly spoke, and it was his brother Safi and I who became really super close over those years.
Yeah.
I hardly really got to know anymore what he was doing. And by that time, he was known as Rizal, right?
Rizal.
But I know his reputation preceded him, so I just knew that he was a rock icon. That was basically what I knew, and I regret that I did not pursue him more, because had I done so, especially in the state of mind and being that I am in now, I've become a bit of an impresario. So I always see the possibilities in people, and then create pathways for something to happen around them, and that is now what I do. And had I learned this ability at that time, there was no way that Dondi could have gotten away without creating something that would have been recorded, archived, made momentous, and iconic. I would have sought it.
I'm just thinking about it now. I mean, you guys could have come up with some original play, and him, just all the music is from him, because oh my God, his albums. I don't know if he gave you copies of his albums, but they're full on orchestrated. It's full on orchestrated music. He could have done dozens of plays, if not
Do
hundreds.
you have copies of that?
Not anymore, but it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, Tito. Just search
Okay.
Donnie Ledesma. Everything's on there because I think his kid is really
Dane.
diligent about Dane, is posting everything that his dad did, which is good because that's another guy, man. He's not he you cannot the Philippine culture cannot forget Donnie Ledesma, and just
Let's
because they're
let's
not
let's
here anymore.
let's talk about him some more, and maybe somewhere down the line we can do a posthumous project where he will be
Yeah.
immortalized. Sometimes music lang kasi it caters to a particular crowd, so you kind of have to translate it into another medium so that it
Right.
reaches a wider market. Again, this is my background, having done mainstream,
Yeah.
but we got to bring Dondi Ledesma or Rizal Ledesma out there, in
Yeah.
pop culture.
I mean, there's so many musicians. If only the majority of people knew. It's like here in America when you say Louis Armstrong. It's like,
Mm,
yeah, Louis Armstrong. If you
mm,
say Frank Sinatra, yeah, Sinatra. If you say um that choreographer of West Side Story, you say that name, people, yeah, that's the guy who did West Side Story. you know. So the Philippines has the same level, I think, of persons or talents, and it's really important that they're acknowledged, even though they're gone, especially when they're gone, because when they're gone, the tendency is to forget, that,
yeah.
and every generation, if you don't tell that story to the next one, they're not gonna know. you know
Yes. So
okay, so
let's
Tito, so now what's your let's
well
go into the present. What's your thing now?
like I said, having put up trumpets and having led it for many decades, I have evolved into somebody who um, leads now. The life of an artist is like I always describe it like like a pebble in water. You throw the pebble into water and you get your first ripple, and then it has the ripple effect and it gets wider and wider.
Yeah.
And I think that is what my life or any artist's life should be. It should be far reaching, it should be encompassing.
Yeah.
If an artist remains at the first impact and dyan ka lang, in other words, me, myself, and I, and nothing's more tragic than that. We've seen it happen again and again with big stars, the Michael
Yeah.
Jackson, the Elvises, and all of that, where
Right.
if it's all about just you and your genius, it's like a black hole. You're that's it. It's going to be dead in the water at one point. I mean, as popular as you're ever going to be, and as iconic, and as you're going to be, however, but the reach, and by way of um, your fulfillment is not going to be. I'm talking not impact and popularity, because who's going to argue that Michael Jackson is not probably the greatest performer who ever lived, or
Right.
Elvis, right?
Yeah.
Or Frank Sinatra. But I'm talking about the sense of fulfillment as an artist, that you need to be far reaching, and it has to expand beyond yourself, so that becomes, there's purpose.
Purpose. Yes. That's it.
There's
That's it.
purpose.
Yeah, that's the thing. Oh my God! Speaking of that, just a short story. The the song "More Than a Feeling" by Boston. More than a feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so the singer of that band, he unfortunately committed suicide maybe in the mid 2000s, but he left a note, and he wrote down, it's like, I'm doing this. I did this because I can't write a song anymore. That is, aside from whatever personal stuff he wrote, he said, I did this. I'm committing suicide because I don't have anything to give anymore. I can't write a song. He was probably struggling, trying to write a song. Of course, More Than a Feeling, that's the bar. So you got to write your songs as good as that, or even better. So I guess and then it goes back to what you said. An artist has to always reinvent themselves, or else the purpose, once you run out of things to do, that's the worst thing for an artist.
But it's not only just reinventing; it is about reaching beyond oneself. It's about being other centered, because the problem with artists is that we become so self centered,
Right.
and that is a black hole, you know. And in fact, many of the artists who died young was out of the disappointment that, as big the contrast is, as big as they were empty inside. And I think the only way you can counter that trajectory is to be other centered. So that has been my career now, Les. I mean, I've had a great run. You know, last year I cleaned out my library. I did this Marie Kondo thing where you go through stuff and get rid of stuff that you no longer use.
Oh, I know that show. That's a good show.
Yeah. But I cleaned out my library, but what it did was it forced me to go through every single script I had done, all the pictures of my career, my posters, my opening night gifts, my programs. And it really, really super blessed me. And I said to myself, if I die tomorrow, I've lived a good life, because I went through that whole process already, you know. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Who cares? I even told my son Richard, okay, after I go, you can do whatever you want with my stuff. You don't have to lug it around, right?
Right. Yeah.
Create a museum. I mean,
yeah.
For my purpose, you know. I mean, just so that I know what I've done in my life. But everything, hence, Les, has already been about other people.
Right.
Everything that I've done has been already about others. So, for example, putting up Trumpets and being head of a theater company was about producing original material. So I gave, a lot of opportunities for new writers to come up with material that we could do original Filipino music, even if it's in English, but we did so. Yeah. And then I put up a second company with some of my partners called Stages, which manages talents now. And we also put up a workshop called Play Shop that discovered a lot of talent over these years. It's already on its 27th year. And because we were discovering so many talent there, we put up a management company called Stages.
Yes, I know this.
Which now manages so many people.
Oh my God.
Then after Stages and managing people, I've already put up a school. It's called the School of Academics and Arts, called TISA. Yeah. And the concept of that thing, and it goes back to what happened to my experience about being a kid who never knew what he was gifted at until so late in the day, and even struggled through most of his adult life trying to figure out whether this is the right thing to do. TISA hopes to address all of that, because in TISA, we do right brain, left brain development. In other words, we don't only focus on the academics, we focus on the artistic, creative side. So the cognitive and artistic side. Now think about this. Yes? We have two sides of our brain. Yeah. The left side and the right side. And we know the left side is more cognitive, the right side is more creative. And yet most schools only develop the academic side.
Yes.
So people are going around with half a brain functioning.
Half a brain. Yeah, exactly. It's literally half a brain.
Half a brain.
And especially now here in the States, Tito, there's no more arts in the schools because they can't afford it. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. How can you sacrifice arts? That's the other part of the brain. That's the 50% of the brain.
Right. And then it just underlines the fact, Les, that all of us are structured different. Our brains are structured different. Like fingerprints were different. Every single person is different. Yeah. And to have a school that caters to only one kind of brain is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
Right. So my big rallying cry right now is for young people and parents especially to understand that your child is special in a certain way, and they need to make sure that child discovers his full potential and design early on so that he doesn't have to struggle through it. Yes, the academics is there. And my exposure at accounting in business school, it helped me a lot. And my parents' idea of making sure I have a college education has helped me a lot, because there's two sides to showbiz, the show and the biz.
Yes.
So the business side I've learned to also do, because it's important. The other big mistake is artists just going for their art. They're going to starve.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
you have to figure out how to be able to make money if you want to practice your art, and so that's why we put up stages and all of that, because it provides jobs and everything. But the school really basically hopes to address this problem. Education, starting kids early on, discovering both their left brain and right brain, so they can be both good at their academics, but also
exactly. And that would be like developing, like, well, not the perfect human, but as much, because like if you, like they always say, we're only using 10% of our brain. It's like, yeah, I believe it, especially nowadays. I mean, people are using 0% of their brain. So
right.
it's great to have a school like that somewhere. I'm sure everywhere, I mean, not the big universities or whatever, but you start them off young, so that they can discover it themselves and they become themselves at an early age.
Right. And even if they choose not to be an artist, never to pursue the arts, they would have been better because their creative thinking has been expanded.
Yeah.
You can certainly use that in business. Everything now, you have to think laterally, not and it's funny how we started your interview talking about politics, although we wanted to avoid it.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how people are so myopic in thinking because they lack education and exposure, and how artists, because we are forced to have empathy and to look at life, liberally, because we have to be able to reflect it. You can't if you're judging it.
Yes.
So you have to be more open to all forms of thinking and philosophies and cultures and all of that.
Yeah.
A child that goes through a school that is more expansive in creativity will make him will have more empathy, and
yes,
he will become a better human being. You are developing his soul.
I totally believe that.
Brain.
Yeah. Because then, if this person chooses to be a CEO, like let's say Bezos, or the owner of Amazon, he will have that empathy to not go overboard. Or if you wanna be a billionaire, but make your workers not not starve. Don't. It's like, let them really be proud. I mean, in truth, not through commercials, but in truth, it's like, yeah, Amazon, they treat me well, man. Yeah. So that's what you're doing is great. It's what really people need to teach. Even though I don't have a kid of my own, it's like, I live with my sister's son, and and she's raising him that way. It's like the cognitive side and also the artistic side, and through sports and whatever, so that he gets. And that kid, when he was like 7 years old, he was already traveling to the Philippines. So he can eat sushi, he can eat everything already by 7. So it's the same thing.
Diego has a great spirit. The last time he was here, I think 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I had a dog who was dying, and
oh yeah, that's right.
And how he related to the dog, and how April explained it to him, and how that boy has soul. He has he has heart. He has a heart.
He has, yeah. So that's why, I mean, it's important for schools to I guess, approach teaching that way, so that when you see someone who's like that, then okay, we're doing something good for this kid. We're going to reinforce that kindness and make it even more kind, and talagang selfless or whatever, but still have that cognitive thing to pursue whatever you want to pursue. If you want to become a businessman, go for it. But that sense of empathy is like, oh, I don't want to, if I beat this guy, I'm not going to step on his neck. I'm just going to beat him, and then that's it. If I get the promotion, fine. I'm not gonna rub it in. So.
Yeah. Diba? So that's where I am at this point, Les. It's basically about the bigger picture. I'm just making sure now that I think it's legacy building already for me. I mean, I'm good as an artist. I mean, I still would like to act, and I still have a lot of roles in mind, and I would still like to. But more than anything, it's really basically creating a legacy or a pathway for young people to cross.
It's the natural course.
Yeah. And it's funny because my son, who I never raised to be an artist, just like 3 summers ago, Golden Play Shop, Trumpets Play Shop, and they had a showcase. And the showcase that they did was a musical we did called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Right.
And his teacher cast him to play Aslan, which was the role I played.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Okay? And Les, can you imagine me walking into the theater and my son, who at that time was maybe 17, opens his mouth.
This is the first time you're seeing him?
The first time I'm seeing him, perform.
Perform, yeah.
Yeah, because I never forced him to do it. I mean, I encouraged him to take piano like you. I have a tale before we end later on about you.
Okay.
And the piano. Like I tell him, take piano, take guitar, and all that thing. But I never, rammed it down his throat, and so I didn't expect anything. And even going to the workshop, he decided to do on his own. But there I was in the audience looking at him. He opened his mouth, and it was my voice.
Oh,
it was
wow.
There was this big booming young voice though, but God is just so good. I mean, I just sat there and I said, "My Lord, you are an awesome God."
Yeah.
If I look at my life, how very quickly from this little kid in Iloilo to where I am right now, and then seeing a new generation come up out of that.
And it's your son.
And it's my son. It's got to be God. It's got
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the plan. That's your plan. And the thing with what I've heard from you talking is that it's like you always followed your heart. It seems that, okay, you got advice from Zenaida Almodor, which is sage advice, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you got there, it's like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
You were true to yourself. You didn't force yourself to finish film school and then have all this information, but you never do a film, because you don't like doing it.
Yeah.
So you're always true to yourself. So I guess that's the plan. It's like you have to be true to yourself, and then your plan will unfold.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great story to see your son doing that with the same booming voice. Like, did you get goosebumps?
I did. I was just, and everybody was saying, "What the heck? What's happening here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's got to be God. It's got to be God."
So what? Everyone was looking back at you in the theater. It's like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah. So it's like, okay.
Wow.
But anyway, I have my story about you is that before I left the States, when I was before we left the States, so we gave up. I gave up because Nonel and I both left. Nauna lang ako. I think he was in Iloilo and I was here in Manila, and I left. We gave up the house we were staying in, and I stayed over your house in the interim before I was preparing to go to the
in Pasig.
In Pasig.
Yeah.
And I remember this was like in the 80s.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I was grade 6, grade 7. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that your mother forced you. And here are parents again forcing kids, but later on it would pay out.
Oh yeah, talaga.
Take piano lessons, and it was so funny because so there she was. You were in front of the piano and you were playing this little piece.
Right. And
then your mom would be there very strictly making sure that you were doing the piece properly.
Yeah.
Right. And I was watching this unfold, and then she would leave, and then she left the room.
Right.
And the moment she left the room, you played Beat It, Beat It, Beat It.
Oh my God. What the notes of Beat It?
Come back in and she's, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing. And then you go back to your little piece.
Oh my God. I don't remember. What the notes of Beat It or something?
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun,
oh my God. I don't remember that.
Hilarious. I could never forget it. I could never forget it.
You know why? I think because because I remember that was the first time we came here to the States and Thriller came out, had just come out. So everything on the radio, every time we drive in the car, I think Dad borrowed Tito Mando's car. And so that we would drive to Disneyland, SeaWorld, whatever. And everything on the radio was Michael Jackson because the Thriller album had just come out and it was the biggest thing. So Beat It was like my favorite song at the time. So yeah.
But again, talking about following your heart, Les. I mean, you to divert from this is the little piece you need to learn to what you wanted to play.
Yeah.
So it was no surprise to me later on when out of nowhere, and maybe before we end, I want to ask you this question because next thing I knew, you were a rocker. And next thing I knew,
Yeah.
there was Wolfgang. And I know that you were Wolf. So how did that start? Just for me, I need to know when you decided I was going to do
Oh
rock.
my God, that was in high school. It all happened. You know what? It all like me. We have similar stories. I was a loner until I
You were a
joined.
lone wolf. You were a
I was
lone
a
wolf.
lone wolf. Yeah,
Uh,
I was alone. That's why even in my adult in right now, I don't really go out because I know how to stay home and be chill at home because
mm,
that's how I grew up. I was just in my room listening to the radio, and I would be happy with that, and then just listen to the radio, and then I joined the church group Antioch. Do you remember that?
yes.
Antioch, and that just opened my social life. I just became. I just opened up, just like you did when you went to IS. When you,
Mm,
yeah, it's the same thing. I know that's why I can relate. I know the feeling because all of these people were being nice to me for no reason because they were nice people.
mm,
I did, and somehow, and then that's when I like met so many girls at one time. It's like, oh my God, so many girls. Oh my God. When you're 16, 17, that's like, we're all the, I just had to join this group to see all these girls.
yeah.
Anyway, that's how it happened. And then when I had to form a band when uh, friends of ours who were the cheerleaders of Saint Scholastica's. You remember gals? I don't know if you know that culture in Manila at the time. It was the Girls Athletic League. So it was just like between the women schools, the female schools around Manila would have a sporting tournament,
Mm,
and the opening ceremonies would be a cheerleading competition. So I started a band with my friends in Antioch. This was already 17, 18. And then before we even tried to play our own music or cover other songs, our friends were like, "Hey, Saints Co needs a band for gals next time for the next competition, and you guys you should play already." Okay, so we get there, and that's my first foray into performing drums in front of an audience. It's a cheerleading competition, and it was a huge thing back then. And it would be in LaSalle Green Hills, that big spaceship looking gym
yeah,
in
yeah.
LaSalle.
Yep.
So that gym would be filled with all the different girls' schools: Assumption, Saints Co, Saint Teresa's, and Maryknoll, whatever else. So for us, being all boys Catholic school, that's like, oh my God, all the girls are here. So when you play in a band in gals, like you said, when you first did your play in high school,
Mm.
instant star, man. Like instant star. All your friends are like the people who'd never talk to you. They're like talking to you now, and then because they see it's like, oh my God, this guy's because I wasn't. No one knew. I didn't even know I wasn't even. That was my first ever time of playing drums, so it was all new to me. But then going back, like you said, the piano lessons, those piano lessons helped me out because
Mhm.
before that time that you saw me play, I was already playing before when I was younger.
Oh.
When we moved out of Dasma,
Mhm.
we went. I think we went to Green Hills already in North, and I started taking piano lessons at that time, or seriously, and then there would be recitals, so I
Mhm.
would perform, and not just piano but organ now because it's the late 70s, so organ
Yeah,
is the thing, right?
yeah,
So I
yeah.
could play the organ really well, and note reading, that's I was really good, Tito. I could read notes like nobody's business and play the organ. So when I shifted to drums, it's kind of came naturally because in the organ you're playing the melody on the right hand, the bass on the rhythm on the left hand, and then the bass line on your foot, on your left foot, and then you have a volume pedal on your right. So you're doing all your limbs are working. So when I switched to drums, which all limbs are working, it kind of just fit, you know.
Why did you switch?
Oh, because I wanted to be a guitarist at first. Of course, you want to be the guitarist in a rock band. You're there, you get all the chicks, you're playing in front of the stage. But then I couldn't play. I could only play chords. That's it. And then when we had our first rehearsal for that band, everyone got into the studio. It's like, hey, we don't have a drummer. We didn't realize we didn't have a drummer.
Ganon.
Yeah, ganun. So I was like, well, I think I can carry beats. So I had to go and buy drumsticks in Park Square, and this was in the basement of Rizal Theater, the studio. And then I just got on the drums. It felt good. It's like, oh my god, I can actually play. That's the first time I ever played on the drum set. And then I was a drummer ever since. I sold the guitar. My dad bought me a guitar for graduation from high school, and then I sold it, and I was a drummer ever since because it's like it fit. This is the one I want. This is what I like.
Have you ever tinkered with the piano since?
No, no. Even before, I mean, when I grew out of the piano lessons, I stopped playing piano already. But then maybe a couple of years ago, I tried to do scales. And I was like, okay, I still know the fingering and all of that. It's there. But it actually helped me with the drumming and also the performing from the recitals. Because you're playing, and you're not, when in recital, you have to memorize the piece. There's no paper in front of you.
Right, right.
So, the nerves of up next is Leslie Gemora to play da da da. So the crowd is there, all the parents of the others, and you're there, and hearts beating, and I'm like 8 years old, 8, 9 years old, and and then I play the piece, da, 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 no mistakes, because you can't make a mistake in those recitals. One mistake, you're dead. You cannot make one mistake, one bum note, no puedo. So you're playing, and then you finish finish the piece, and the teachers really like it when there's no mistakes. So the whole crowd just like, ah. So in an early age, 7, 8, 9 years old, I was already getting that audience energy. It's like, ooh, if I play the piano really well, these people are gonna love me or whatever. So that's how it started. Yeah.
And how did you become Wolf?
Well, that's a really long story. I'll send you a link. It's a really long story. Yeah.
I'll really be interested.
Yeah, but and I think the link I'll send you it's a really more detailed than I'll do it now. I won't give it justice right now. But
awesome.
But I mean, like I totally understand your story, because it's like I know the feelings of what you
parallel.
Yeah,
very parallel.
Yeah.
Very parallel.
And I think it's the story of any artist. I think is that you have to discover yourself first before you can actually, put yourself out there and say, okay, I'm Audie Gemora. This is me. Take it or leave it, but I know I can do it.
Yeah.
There's a journey that has to happen before you can reach that level.
Right. There was just a very particular point. I think this was in the and we can end with this. There was a particular point, I believe in the mid 90s, 97, around about that, when I was ready to go on for a role of a Ryan Cayabyab musical called El Fili. I was playing Simon, and I was waiting at the wings of the main theater of the CCP, about to go on. And I remember Celeste Legaspi was my Maria Clara, and she was performing on stage. And as I stood there waiting to come on, it really super dawned on me. It was a real moment when I said, this is what I do best, and this is what I'll do till the end of my day.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all the doubt of tapat ba to, ganyan, it was gone. That was the moment when I said, I'm going to do this. I am going to do this, and I'm going to stick by it. And everything that I do, and have done since, in one form or another, whether it's business, has always had to do with being an artist. So
Yeah.
I guess if you embrace at one point who you are and what your design is, everything can emanate from that. And I
Yeah.
really think you should follow that. And that's what you've done as well.
Yeah. 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 That's why we experience people who don't get to do it. They don't last because they don't have that avenue to discover themselves. Be it
Yeah.
with money or situation or whatever. So, yeah, or like if like if a musician, I've seen so many musicians get their girlfriends pregnant so early, and then they had to quit, to get a real job and
Yeah.
to support a family. I mean, of course, that's the right thing to do, but then you're like, oh man, he could have been a really good musician, or whatever. So yeah, I get it.
Well,
So
not
anyway,
everybody's
oh,
going to be a successful story, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah,
not everybody's going to be a star, right? So, but at least kahit papano, if you are an artist, practice it. Even if you're working somewhere, still have that outlet because that's what you're designed to do. And until you do what you were designed to do, you'll never be happy.
right. Oh yes, that's correct. That is, yeah, yeah. It's really about being happy with what you do.
We live one life, Les. Only one
Yeah.
life.
Yep.
What a bummer if you lived your life and then never did it to the fullest, never do
Yeah.
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes forever to discover what you're really supposed to do. you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, to close. Okay, you mentioned this. What role do you want to play? What is the number one role you still want to play?
Ah, I get asked that a lot, and
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that the older you get, the fewer roles there are because really the soft spot for big roles are really in your 30s into your 40s, and I'm way
Right.
past.
Okay.
No, I never look anymore in terms of roles. I look in terms of, like I said, my legacy, which is basically, do I open the Red Sea for young artists to go through? That's basically what I'm now after. And nothing gives me more pleasure or fulfillment now than to discover talent, initiate a project that will give birth to a musical or to a recording or to discover a new artist. Nothing thrills me more than that, to see our workshops and then discovering new talent there. That is what turns me on now. And it's funny that even as we are in this pandemic, I am seeing nothing but opportunities to figure out ways to create more platforms for artists, and not necessarily even young, to perform in.
Yeah.
That's what I'm about right now. That's what makes me go on. The idea that I now allow or usher in art.
Yeah.
That's
Like you
what
said, you're an impresario. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. All right, Tito Audie Gemora, folks. Thank you very much for your time. I really, really appreciate this. And down the line, let's do it again and talk more.
We'll talk project next time.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, look for that email if you still have it. If ever you
Okay,
still have it.
I don't even remember it anymore. So maybe were you the one who sent it or Jamie?
I think Jamie did.
I'll nag him, and you nag
Okay.
him.
Yeah, I will. All right. Thank you very much, ladies
Thanks,
and
Brad.
gentlemen. Audie Gemora. Thank you, Tito. See you soon.
Pleasure.
All right. Bye.